What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Inside the Burrow. This is Jacob Kelly, joined by Zach Weinberger, JJ Metz, and we are joined today by the voice of the Bobcats, Russ Eisenstein. Russ, how are you doing today?
Doing great. In the middle of this drive from Athens down to Boca. I'll stop in Daytona for 2 nights. So burning the candle at both ends, as we say, and really looking forward to the ball game on Saturday night.
Yeah, we are really looking forward to it, and we're really appreciative of you joining us here today. He does not have his camera on right now because of the fact that he's driving safety first. So we're just going to get straight into things. Starting about that, I think the most pivotal question about the Ohio Bobcats coming into this game is around the quarterback. Last year, Curtis Rourke had a very successful season, 3,200 yards, 25 touchdowns. It did go down with an ACL injury last November, and we saw in the opening game against San Diego State, he re-injured that knee. What is the current feeling like as to whether Curtis Rourke is going to be available to go on Saturday?
Well, he's trending in the right direction. That's what Tim Albin said on Monday night. And a point of clarification, unless unbelievably obvious, Ohio does not release specific injuries. And so the thought that it was the tweak of the ACL again is not necessarily correct. Went down in week 0 at the end of the first quarter, of which he looked really good. It looked like he had no rust. On the record, on camera and on tape, Tim said that it wasn't the knee, didn't need X-rays, and they were precautionary for him the rest of that game, and precautionary last week. That's the benefit of the FCS game on the schedule. No disrespect to LIU, but there was a chance to be able to play some other guys. He was on the sideline without pads, but in a jersey, and looked to be in good spirits. And as of as of Tuesday night, Tim said that he was trending in the right direction. So we'll see if he can go on Saturday.
Yeah, for sure. It would be a great key addition if they did have Curtis Rourke. But behind Rourke are two seniors in CJ Harris and Parker Navarro. We got to see both of them against Long Island University game in the win for Ohio. If Rourke is unable to go, then which of those two backup seniors are you most confident in, and is the team most comfortable with?
That's a good question. Good research there on seeing who Ohio's backups, or in this case, 1A and 2 would be. CJ was the Bowl MVP last year. Came in to put the win away at Ball State after the injury, and then blew out Bowling Green. And then obviously Toledo's defense is really good in the MAC championship game, and that was a low-scoring game. Bowl game, you saw exactly what he could do with his legs and with his arm. I don't think it was a really good matchup for him against San Diego State. I think it was a better matchup for Curtis for sure. I think that if Curtis was in the game based on that matchup, and no disrespect to CJ, because he could win a lot of games for Ohio, whatever it was on that day, it just didn't match his skill set, particularly in that game. So I think there's lots of confidence in CJ. And Parker Navarro, he's a UCF transfer. He's from Phoenix, got hurt against Iowa State last year, and it was a long rehab process for him. That was the first time that he had played since non-conference play of last year. And he was just so excited to get back onto the field. He's a durable runner, too. And when Ohio's had success over the years, and there have been a lot of good quarterbacks at Ohio, the Bobcats have been able to run and throw. Curtis Rourke is the younger brother of Nathan, who's on the practice squad for the Jaguars now, who was in the CFL last year. So there's a lineage here. And I think that the team feels comfortable with either of their quarterbacks. And that's not just coach speak. That's not Peter Positive PR speak. That's for real. They feel good about all three of them.
Yeah, for sure. It's great to have three capable quarterbacks to go out and play. But who is one player on this Ohio Bobcats team that the FAU Owls really aren't expecting to have a good game, but for that player on Ohio to really have a breakout game?
Well, if we're talking on the offensive side, I think FAU and Ohio are very similar to where obviously 5 touchdown passes for Casey Thompson last week. N'Kosi Perry at 5 against Ohio last year. And so if it's Rourke is the guy for sure. And he is the catalyst for so many things. And if you saw the first quarter against San Diego State, he looked great. and it was just unfortunate that he went down to injury. But there's a balance of the run and pass. And I think Larry McCammon is an outstanding running back for FAU. Ohio kept him under wraps last year, around 60 yards in the game, had a great game against Monmouth. And so much like Larry McCammon, I think C.A. Bangura, if Ohio gets 100 yards out of C.A., there's a real chance there to win a ball game. He got there for the 5th time in his career last week. He's the Max Offensive Player of the Week on the East side. And then on the defensive side, you guys got a lot of really good defensive players too. Bryce Houston could be the best linebacker in the Mid-American Conference. He has 24 tackles coming in, a sack, TFL, and an INT last week. He's a deep player of the week on the east side of the MAC. And so there's some offensive and defensive guys. Key Thompson, another linebacker too. Plus, it's a homecoming for a lot of guys in Ohio's secondary. There are 3 players that are from the Miami area that are so excited to be back down there on Ohio's defensive secondary side. So there are a lot of players to focus on. It's a good matchup for 2 really good teams with a lot of good players.
Russ, thank you again for joining us here on the Owl's Nest. Obviously the team's going 1-1 so far in the season. Besides, I guess, healthy quarterback play, if Rourke plays, what is sort of the main sort of aspects that stood out to you throughout these first 2 games, whether that be on the positive side or on the negative side?
It's tough because I don't think, at least this year yet, in the 2 games, you really have a full sense of Ohio's overall potential, right? Because it was a 20-13 game in the opener. San Diego State's defense last year was a top 20 defense in the country. They're really, really good. They're a 3-3-5 setup as well. So the strength is in the secondary there. And with Rourke going down in the first quarter, obviously he's the Max Offensive Player of the Year from last year. You didn't see the full capability of what Ohio could do. Last week, it's the FCS game. And again, no disrespect to Long Island, but those are the type of games that you want to show your depth a little bit more. Ohio is a scoring and yardage chewing up team. And when Tim Albin was a coordinator for Ohio, the Bobcats had the best offensive years that they've ever had. And so ideally, it is a type of game of what we saw in the opener last year against FAU. I mean, there were tons of yards and it was a 41-38 game. So I think Ohio's still looking for that next game to allow them to say, hey, this is who we are and this is what we're showing what we are.
These 2 schools met last year in what was an incredible shootout. Ended up with Ohio winning 41-38. But the quarterback play, we saw 709 yards in between the 2, 9 total touchdowns. It was just an absolutely beautiful game. Going into this year, with Ohio the opportunity to sweep these back-to-back games, from an Ohio perspective, what are some of the keys to go out and defeat FAU in a second consecutive season?
Yeah, I'll start on the defensive side. You've got to limit the big play. And last week, and watching the game and listening to Ken Levicka and Owl Radio, he reached decibel levels that you normally don't reach against in openers like that. So it was just so fun to hear and see. Limiting the big play, limiting the explosive play, and Ohio needs to get some explosive plays too. Bobcats didn't have that many in the opener against San Diego State. Last week, limited. That was kind of a throwback game. So limiting the explosive play from FAU standpoint, which is going to be really hard with Burton, Johnson, and Wester at the wide receiving core. And then, McCammon could break out as well. Casey Thompson was recruited by Tim Albin. Ohio was one of his first offers. Tim is from Oklahoma, and of course, Casey from Oklahoma City. And so he knows Tom Herman very well, Tim. So if there's going to be any coach in the country that knows what Casey Thompson can do, in addition to Herman, Nebraska's coaching staff from before, and the FAU staff, it's Tim Albin. So being able to be sure that he doesn't get going nuts again, like he did last week, I think that's going to be really important.
Yeah, and I know that you mentioned that Curtis Rourke is most likely gonna play, but there's still some worry around the injury to Curtis Rourke. Sia Bangero has the ability to carry this offense, as was seen with the 107 yards against the Victory last week. How much does CA help this offense run?
Good question. Also, to clarify, I didn't say he was likely to start. Most likely trending in the right direction. We're taping this on Wednesday afternoon, and so a lot can change. So we'll see who the starter is, and we'll make that announcement on our pregame show prior to the ball game around the air at 5 Eastern time. But to your point on CA, he's a guy that I think has Power 5 type ability from a conference standpoint. I think when you see him get off the bus, he's muscular. He's certainly athletic, has a really good quick first step. He's worked on his pass protection, which I think is important. And then when you add O'Shawn Allison in the mix, he's a guy that had to battle through injury, didn't play last year, had around 900 yards in 2019, and had 6 touchdowns. So ideally, Ohio has a really good 1-2 threat there. Plus, there are some other guys that can make plays from the running back room as well. And this team is pretty deep. There are some wide receivers that still haven't made catches yet that can make some plays. Aramani Rowan is a Florida native. He's 6'4" and really, really fast. And so much like FAU, when you start going down the list of players, you could do the same thing with Ohio, because there are so many players on both sides of the ball in this matchup for both teams where you could say, that guy can make some plays.
And just kind of focusing a little bit on the defensive side of the ball, you kind of alluded to Bryce Houston, and obviously he's been kind of everywhere, all over the field the past couple of games. How can just bluntly, how big of a game changer is he for Ohio and just kind of carrying, possibly the rest of this defense?
It was a game changer when he said he wanted to come back. He's a multi-time graduate of Ohio. He's going to be a hedge fund manager at some point in his life. Incredibly smart when it comes to financials. From the stock market and financial planning. So he has a lucrative job waiting for him if it's not football anyway. But he decided to come back because he wants to win a MAC championship. And that loss last year to Toledo hurt. So Ohio was winning with Bryce before a game was even played with Bryce this year. And then you look at the rest of the linebackers. Keith Thompson is Ohio tough. Keith Thompson is the type of linebacker that Ohio's had over the years, and he's another. He's from the Akron-Canton area. He's from Barberton. And much like in the state of Florida, there are so many schools that are synonymous with high school football. Keith Thompson's another one from that area. Folks in Florida might have heard of Canton and Massillon and that area of Ohio. Well, he's from Barberton, which is right there. And so when you've got those two guys working in tandem, they're veteran. They play off each other. They've been around each other for so many years now. You've got two old friends and two teammates that are seasoned, that are working together, and they're really, really fun to see play.
We have 2 more questions with you before we wrap things up. This will be the final one, talking about the game. As we round out the show, we always like to give our predictions for the game. And from the Ohio's perspective, how do you see this game turning out?
Yeah, it's a toss-up, really. I'm not one to make predictions when it comes to stuff publicly. For me personally, as a voice, I just don't think that's a good idea to do anyway. I always root for Ohio. I always hope great things for Ohio. You got to be honest about the matchup. And quite honestly, this is a great matchup for both sides. I think this is going to be a really fun game. I think it's going to be fun on TV, fun on radio, fun in person. So I hope FAU fans come out, because I think there'll be some Bobcat fans there too. And so with it being a 6 o'clock game, the thing that I'm looking forward to is the whole experience. I know Tom Herman challenged the fans to come out on Saturday night, and I'd love to see that challenge answered. I want this to be a big-time atmosphere. And they're going to be treated to, I think, a game that has a whole lot of opportunities for points. But I think if you think this is just going to be a shootout, you're not doing the defenses enough service here, because I think both teams have good defenses. So there could be big plays on both sides of the ball. And my prediction is just for a whole lot of fun. And whoever wins the game is going to earn it, and going to be 2-1 on 2-0 potentially for FAU, and 2-1 for Ohio.
Yeah, if we get a game that's similar to the Nation that we saw last year, it is certain to be one of the most entertaining games for both teams' schedule. And I'd like to end it on more of a professional question. We have 3 of us here that are looking to get into the sports journalism field, and possibly many people listening into this that I'd like to do so. What advice would you give for those that are trying to make it in this field?
It's a really tough business. It really is, because they're not adding more schools on the D1 level. They're not adding more professional teams, right? So you've got to be talented and you've got to be lucky. And the bottom line to it all is, I'm fortunate to have been at Ohio for 16 seasons now. Idaho State prior to that, was in the NBA prior to that in Oklahoma City. And it's a hard business, and it's all about timing, and it's a great deal about luck. But no matter where you are, you have to be true to yourself and be honest with yourself as well. I feel that our broadcasts are a Power 5 and pro level. I believe that. Without a doubt, I believe that. And I've got really high goals in my career. But there's got to be luck there too. But ultimately, if you feel that you're doing your absolute best, it doesn't matter if there are 5 people listening or 5,000 people listening. You've got to be ready for when that call comes. And no matter what, I'm proud to be the voice of the Bobcats. I'm proud of what I've done and what we do as a network together. And you guys too. Hopefully there's luck in your career, but you've got to be honest with yourself to say, hey, am I really on that level? Am I really broadcasting at that level? Am I really doing everything I need to do for myself to earn and deserve that position? Because if and when that ever comes for me, I know through all these years, I will deserve it, and I'll pay it forward for sure. And that's the type of philosophy that I hope younger broadcasters have. You know, I'm jealous of this generation because there's so many opportunities for podcasts and E+ and all that other stuff. Growing up, I had a tape recorder and a microphone. If I had the ability to put stuff on the internet, I'm pretty certain that my sportscast would have been, hey, wow, look at that guy. You know, it didn't happen. It just was the roll of the dice that didn't work out. But I'm trying my best, and hopefully I inspire others to try their best too. And that extends beyond broadcasting. It's about living the life the right way and doing everything that you can in your life for people that are important to you and yourself. So those are the tips that I give anybody. Be ready for it. Be good at what you do. Be good to other people, and hopefully you're really, really lucky, because that's what it's going to take to get there in this business.
Well, Russ, we really appreciate those words. They truly were very inspiring and great advice for us, and hopefully we can then take that and apply it. And we really much enjoyed your time here on the show today. We're very much looking forward to the game on Saturday, and again, we just really appreciate your time here with us today.
Yeah, if you guys are upstairs, stop by the booth. Keep in contact after the game. It's a great game to play. Really looking forward to get down there and soaking in the atmosphere, and should be fun on Saturday night.
Hopefully it will. Certainly will be. And again, thank you very much for your time. Take care.
See you guys.
And once again, we just really like to thank Russ for joining us. It was really great to have somebody who's on the Bobcat side of things be able to talk to us. And now we'll get into a little bit more some of the things that he talked about and look at FAU and what we're expecting to happen on Saturday. And the biggest takeaway was, with our first few questions, the quarterback situation. Is it going to be Rourke? Is it going to be Navarro? Is it going to be Harris? It's still a pretty big question mark. Going based off the things he said, and we know he wanted to tiptoe around it because there's no official nothing official out as to who is going to be that quarterback. But it does look like Rourke's going to play, just based on his wordage, based on also some things that we've seen in the media the last few days. Zach, how big of an impact do you think it is going from Rourke as a quarterback to these other two guys?
Well, to me, it makes a difference between a win and a loss, honestly. Again, Curtis Rourke is a guy that is one of the better quarterbacks in the MAC. He over 3,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, I believe. I mean, he was incredibly efficient, spreads the ball around. You look at him last season when they faced FAU, it was a huge, high-scoring game. So to me, again, if they're going to go with, the 2-quarterback system besides him, I think that gives kind of the FAU defense a little bit more to work with, especially because you have kind of 2 games on them. And obviously there's some defensive people on the FAU that we don't know of. Armani Eli Adams, a huge DB in that room, still in concussion protocol. We don't know about his availability for the game. But again, Rourke is a guy you have to look out for. I mean, this could be could be a sort of replication of what we saw last season. Again, obviously Russ sort of alluded to it. A high-scoring game, went down to the last possession. It might be the same thing this time around. I do think, though, that Curtis Rourke is going to throw so much at this defense that it's going to get it prepared for the rest of the season. So it could be a kind of a benefit in that way. But again, the defensive line, we've been talking about FAU's defensive line all season, all preseason, about the depth and everything. That needs to be really key in kind of pressuring Rourke, pressuring whoever is the signal caller, and especially stopping the run game. So I do think Rourke, if he's playing, this could be a very close game, come Saturday.
Yeah, and you look at the difference between Rourke and those 2 quarterbacks. When Navarro and Harris were playing, against Long Island last week, they only had a combined 104 passing yards. They got 107 yards from Bangura out of the backfield. So you're looking at two guys that, just based off what we saw last week against definitely a lesser competition, they didn't look too comfortable. They also weren't given a lot of opportunities to throw the ball. Only 15 total passes attempted, not even completed. They were only given 15 opportunities to throw the ball. So, if we didn't get a good picture of them throwing the ball, we know this is a team that's very comfortable running the ball. And in fact, with those two guys, Navarro was the second leading rusher of the day, and then Harris was the third leading rusher of the day behind, obviously, Bangura. So this is an offense that, if one of those two or both of those two end up playing, it's probably going to be a rushing heavy a game that we're going to have to expect from Ohio. But if Rourke does play, last year, I believe 350 yards, 4 or 5 touchdowns is more on the table than if the other two guys play. But we've talked a lot about Ohio. Got to hear from Russ about Ohio. And now with FAU, we saw the offensive onslaught that it was last week in JJ. We got to see the 3 wide receivers of Tony Johnson, LaJonte Wester, and Jaquan Burton all get in the end zone. Casey Thompson had a superb day. What are you looking forward from FAU to continue on from their performance last week against Monmouth?
I mean, the offense really fired on all cylinders, and as you mentioned, Casey Thompson had 5 total touchdown passes and to 3 different wide receivers is very, very impressive. What I'm really looking forward to is continuing the running game, really. Kobe Lewis, we're adding him back, obviously his first game back at FAU after transferring last year. From Purdue to FAU, but obviously we didn't see him play, so Zuberi and Larry got all the carries last week, and really looking forward to the running game and seeing how well all 3 running backs can gel together, and hopefully we can get into the end zone and defeat that Ohio defense.
Yeah, we're coming off a game like we mentioned with Russ, how we played them last year. It was a very tight ball game, 41-38. Zach, what are some big differences that you see with this team this year compared to last year? Obviously, play caller, quarterback. What are some things that FAU might look to do a little bit differently compared to how things went last year against Ohio?
Yeah, I think you just got to clean up some mistakes, because even though, again, we expected FAU to kind of beat on Monmouth, really, but I did see some defensive lapses in those 3, TD scoring drives on Monmouth that the defense, again, the DBs, it wasn't the running game. We stopped Jaden Sheridan, who was a top rusher in the country on whatever level, FCS or FBS or whatever. It was just in the passing game, there's a lot of lapses from the DBs. And again, if Armani Eli Adams does not play, that's going to be a huge blow for them. So I think Rock Billantoni has to have a really good game plan going into this Saturday, especially if they know that Rourke is going to play, because that might be something that they're going to abuse all night. And I think on offense, even kind of Herman told me during the press conferences, whether it be post game or this past Monday on Zoom, just kind of talking about, again, there's a lot of moments during the game in Monmouth, especially towards the end of that first half, where really the game could have just been put away on a lot of drives. But Casey throws the interception, or the defense has a huge kind of penalty that puts him back. They kind of played a clean game in terms of penalties, but it kind of, with that one hit penalty, really ruined that drive. So again, just kind of clean up those mistakes, because you can make them against Monmouth. You cannot make those against Ohio, because they're really going to take advantage. So to me, that's kind of one of the things. And again, just because it's a new head coach, new QB, mostly new coaching staff, there's some people that are still there. You're going to see some growing pains. I'm still kind of waiting to see. I do think that Ohio is really going to punch him in the mouth, kind of like what they did last season in terms of, kind of destroying that defense. So I'm very interested and fascinated to see how that's going to be, and if the offense is going to start off fast or they're going to kind of slog. So that's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, those turnovers, those penalties are definitely something you want to keep down. Especially, like I said, the one interception that Casey had. From what my vantage point was at the game, just did not see that linebacker sitting there in the zone. And then the fumble that we saw within the 5-yard line, an opportunity to score, ball is immediately given to Monmouth. I don't think they capitalized on it. I think they actually got a 4-and-out and punted it right away. So thankfully, Monmouth wasn't able to capitalize on the turnovers that FAU had, but still something that is going to eventually bite you in the butt if that's something that continues to happen as the season goes on. I'm very excited to see how this offense continues to grow. 5 touchdowns last week from Casey Thompson. Tony Johnson got in the end zone twice. LaJohntay Wester. The offense looks so fluid. It looked as if Casey Thompson has been with this FAU team for years now. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the best it absolutely can be, but he was so comfortable just sitting there in the pocket. He was able to run the offense exactly as he was asked to do so, on top of the athleticism that he's able to show. He's able to get outside the pocket. He's able to pick up yards with his feet, running the RPO offense. Is very comfortable holding onto the ball. I remember he took a very solid shot, which resulted in one of the Monmouth players being ejected for targeting. In the very next play, another RPO, he holds the ball and runs it. Only picks up 3 or 4 yards, but he was willing to put himself right back in the line of danger as immediately after taking a pretty serious hit. And that's something you love to see from the guy leading your team out there. So very excited to see Casey's development, this offensive development under him, and also paying attention to a guy like Armani Eli Adams, who we is very uncertain as to whether he's going to play. I think the defense played very solid against Monmouth. Again, similar to the offense, definitely could be better. But with this Ohio game, Russ was not willing to give us his prediction as to what he thinks, how he thinks it's going to go, how he thinks the score is going to go. But we will here on Inside the Burrow. We're not against doing that. So we're going to start with JJ. You were very audacious with your prediction last week, and for a while it looked like he was going to be coming true, but Monmouth did put up some points on the board, so it wasn't quite as bombastic as you were alluding to. So for this Ohio game, what is your prediction for the game?
Yeah, for sure. Last week I missed on that. I mean, I predicted, I think, 50-3.
55-3, yeah.
Yeah, 55-3. I think, and Monmouth ended up scoring touchdowns. Now, really, what I'm looking at is this Ohio game. I think both teams are very evenly matched. I think that the talent on each team, FAU might be a little bit better, but I'm going to take you through my full game. So at half, I have Ohio leading 20-10, and I actually had this game going to overtime, 38-38, and FAU wins the game in overtime. I have Ohio getting the ball first, then kicking a field goal, making it 41-38, and FAU going down, scoring a touchdown, and ending up winning. And I think that it's going to be a great game. I have 45-41 FAU, and I'm really confident in Ohio. I mean, the spread is -5 for FAU. Me personally, I'm taking Ohio on that spread. But I like FAU to win, but I like Ohio to cover. Close game.
One correction I'll have in there with you is if they do score the touchdown, FAU won't be kicking the extra point, so it would actually be 44.
40,
not to split hairs,
40.
but want to make sure we're on the same level. If that ends up being the game, that would be wildly entertaining, and then going into Clemson would make us just even more excited to do so. Zach, last week I believe you were much more reserved in your prediction. I don't remember the exact score line was, but definitely, especially comparing to the guy right next to you on screen, a lot more reserved. What are we feeling for this week?
Yeah, so I think I said 37-17. FU scored more, and Monmouth scored 3 more points, maybe. So I think it depends who's the quarterback, right? I'm going to do my prediction that Rourke is going to play. So because if he doesn't play, I really think FAU wins, So, but let's say Rourke plays. I'm going to say that FAU comes off a little slow to start off, and I think Ohio is going to lead into halftime, but I think eventually they are going to go ahead and close it out and win this game in the second half here. But I don't think I have too much of a high scoring game. I think I'm just going to go 30-27. And I think that, I don't know if it will be the game-winning field goal to close out the game, but it will be a field goal that gets the go-ahead field goal. I don't know if it's like a buzzer beater type thing. I don't think it's be that, but I'm gonna say it's gonna be an evenly close game, and again, FAU is gonna get the win back from last year.
And 3 points would be pretty nice because that's the difference that they won last year. So 3 points one way, 3 points the other way. 6 points usually when you look at a home and away flip is usually the difference in the spread. So that's what you get credited for being the home team or the away team. So a 3-point victory for FAU is definitely something that makes a lot of sense, and I can see happening. For my end, it definitely does come down to who's playing quarterback. If it is Navarro Harris splitting time just like it was last week, then I do expect FAU probably to win by 20 points or so. But I am going to go with the assumption that Rourke does play. I actually am going to flip it the other way. I think FAU comes out really hot, being that Rourke hasn't had a lot of time with the team over the last couple of weeks. Still figuring out whether he's going to play at all. So not sure how much time he's going to have practicing this week, preparing for FAU. So I think FAU gets, 2 touchdowns on the board before Ohio is able to do so, going up 14-0, and then Ohio does catch up and keep it a close game. I'm going to go with a 10-point margin of victory. I'm going to go with FAU 30, Ohio 20. Clean sweep here from the three of us for FAU winning, and there goes my lights. So good timing, because that's just where we're going to end things off. You're going to have to deal with me being in the dark.
I don't know if that's good luck or bad luck.
Yeah,
I'm hoping. We'll see.
Let's
hoping that's good luck.
Yeah, my lights are now on the floor.
I do quickly want to mention that. I didn't mention this, but my prediction right now is the overtime game. If Rourke plays, if Rourke doesn't play, and we see CJ Harris play, or the other senior quarterback, but I would assume it's CJ Harris. If we do see CJ Harris play, I am going to say 35-3 FAU wins.
Why do you keep thinking these opposing offenses they're going to get 3 points? You're going to get burned again, JJ. Come on.
We need to start keeping track of who's the closest, and we're being that we're FAU fans. Zach and I gone to FAU. I'm not even next week against Clemson. I'm not sure we're ever going to pick FAU to lose. So maybe we should all just see who's the closest week in, week out. I think last week, either Zach or I know JJ obviously was nowhere near. So it was 1 point to Zach and I, 0 points to JJ. I like your audacious mentality, but it just didn't end up happening.
I'll say this real quick. Richard, I believe, also had a pretty close score prediction. Who also, by the way, writes for the Owl's Nest. Check out his stuff. So 3 points for all of us. JJ 50-3 didn't happen. Now 30-3 if the quarterbacks don't play. So we'll see.
Yeah, and make sure to get in the comments. Let us know your score predictions and what you think the game is going to happen. Hopefully, it has a little bit more luck than my lights did, which is somewhere on the ground now. But thank you all very much for tuning in today to Inside the Burrow via the FAU Owl's Nest. If you'd like to check out some of Richard's content that Zach just alluded to and a whole bunch more stuff, please go over to FAUOwlsNest.com. We'll have a link for that down in the description below. While you're down there, please make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit that like button. We will catch you guys next time. Have a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody.